Good afternoon if you're in Sydney, and good morning if located in Qatar. I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar or virtual event that we're hosting on bilateral and synergistic opportunities between Qatar and Australia. My name is Hilton Wood, and I'm the Chief Representative Officer of Doha Bank in Sydney. And during the current COVID pandemic, it certainly placed a lot of pressure global economies, including Australia. However, Australia was one of the quickest to bounce back after authorities imposed strict restrictions, with June quarter GDP expanding by 0.7% ahead of market expectations to be 9.6% throughout the year. The strongest year rate on record. And although the Australian economy is now 1.6% above its pre-pandemic level, with our recovery continuing to lead the pack ahead of many advanced economies, we certainly are in a bit of a downturn with the current lockdowns. But I'm sure that the Australian economy, which is very strong, resilient, will once again bounce back strongly once these lockdowns are over, due to the vaccination rates, which we're well aware of, are certainly coming through quite strongly in certainly New South Wales especially. As a quick introduction for Qatar, which I'm sure many of you won't need a lot of information on, it's a landmass of around 11,600 square kilometres only, with a population of just over 2.7 million, which is very much from the foreign workers and expats. Qatar is a fast-growing economy, blessed with strong gas reserves, and is currently one of the largest exporters of LNG, accounting for around 1/3 of global LNG exports. Based on current production levels, Qatar's gas reserves are expected to last for another 130 years. Qatar's GDP in 2020 is around 146 billion, and in 2008, Qatar launched its Economic Vision 2030, which plans to diversify, reduce the country's resilience on hydrocarbon sector, exports, and the non-oil sectors, which includes a focus on areas such as healthcare, technology, research and development, manufacturing, education, tourism, and services sector. Qatar and Australia have enjoyed a very close and strong bilateral relationship for many years, and Qatar has consolidated its place as Australia's second largest trading partner in the Middle East and North Africa. Australia's annual two-way goods and services trade with Qatar reached a new all-time high of Qatari riyals 5.8 billion, or around 2.33 billion Australian, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Two-way trade grew 28% year on year and has increased fourfold over the past decade. And certainly this can be represented by a number of aspects, including the Australian Embassy, which has been opened in Qatar not that long ago. Doha Bank's representative office in Australia was established in 2012. Since then, we have been providing support to the bilateral relationships between Qatar and Australia, and Doha Bank has become the first bank in the Gulf Cooperation Council, within the Gulf Cooperation Council, to set up and establish a presence in Australia. This represents the bank's long-term commitment to act as a catalyst for trade and investment between the two countries, as well as being a key strategic partner that can help build bridges between Qatari and Australian companies and projects. Today, we have the honour and privilege of having the following speakers: His Excellency, Mr. Sayed Al Sharif, Ambassador, Embassy, State of Qatar. His Excellency, Mr. Jonathan Muir, Ambassador, Australian Embassy, based in Qatar. Mr. Moin Anwar, Trade and Investment Commissioner for the Middle East, New South Wales Government. And of course, our CEO Global for Doha Bank, Dr. Sita Rahman, as moderator, which I now hand over to him.
Thank you, Hilton. What a joy and privilege to be integral part of this interesting and exciting session, bilateral and synergistic opportunities between Qatar and Australia. Two eminent countries known for its governance, now big and small, essentially converging in multiple forms of substance, trade or investments, banking or finance. With the changing face of the world is going through extraordinary set of transformation. With over 220 million people impacted, we lost nearly 4.55 million deaths. That's tragic. The human loss is not measurable. At the same time, how we are coming together in an interconnected, interdependent world, recognizing we have economic risk, and we need to map it through governance. Human risk, as I mentioned, we need to find solutions to bring in better world, better citizenship to this world. We are also objectively looking at environmental risk and how do we use this opportunity to redefine ourselves in terms of global warming and climate change, and creating a carbon neutral society if it is possible to create carbon negative society for our future generation welfare. We also have to recognize social risk. Hitherto not witnessed. We have seen extraordinary set of healthcare challenges and the principle-centered values in terms of social distancing or hygiene. Other tested, proven methods are all being in execution. The world is changing. Everything is changing. The monetary and fiscal policy alignment globally has been redefined. Improving the liquidity, ensuring debt servicing capacity comes in. Business continuity is the key. From disaster to business continuity is the mission. Now, we are all coming together. We are converging on the bigger mission to bring in value to humanity, human dignity, and human prosperity. We also recognize every country is redefining. And we have exemplary policy frameworks getting unified in terms of monetary or fiscal. And again, some of the other risk and governance which I mentioned in various spectrum have been well managed. And today, in global terms, nearly 28% has been administered, nearly over 2.2 billion been administered vaccines. Qatar, in its own respects, the wise governance, visionary leadership in all these four factors, whether it's economic, social, human, or environmental side, has taken enormous measures to see business continuity is very much there. We want to enlighten you to recognize what Qatar has done in the last 18 months or so, how it is resurging as a country of great substance and substantive compliance. Of course, we had 235,000 people impacted. We lost nearly 673 people. Same time, vaccination today, if you look at the eligible population, it's crossing over 85%. If you look at the total population, it's over 77%. So it's poised for reorganization, getting ready for plenty of initiative, including FIFA World Cup 2022, the hydrocarbon momentum, non-hydrocarbon momentum, plenty of excitement in this part of the world. And that's what we want to showcase. Again, Australia, in its own respects, have done an extraordinary job recognizing the challenge, ensuring social risk management to highest level, and ensuring the fiscal prudence and monetary prudence simultaneously, whether interest rate or again, monetary policy, improving the liquidity, fiscal side, ensuring we have over 390 billion has been pumped, 20 billion straight to the overall healthcare and infrastructure creations. Again, job seekers protection, and ensuring we have aviation or healthcare systems are fully functional. They have allocated enormous amount of fiscal discipline to see that fiscal and monetary prudence stand in full alignment. Extraordinary governance in terms of overall measuring it, managing it, and controlling it. Same time, the country of great substance. And we are seeing the reflection in terms of economic momentum. My colleague just mentioned about the growth. We are all optimistic about the overall opportunity post-COVID as well. But we are going to look at objectively and make sure that we have a bigger picture in mind. One of the days. Now we have to look at how do we promote between these two countries, enhancing the trade, enhancing the investment opportunities, which will be the sector. Qatar's GDP and allied reserves are exemplary in terms of investable surplus as a diversification structured solution. Qatar Investment Authority, as Nibras or as South Food have already ventured. And we have bigger scope for Qataris to invest. And similarly, Australians investment authorities or institutions or individuals or banks can come together and promote trade or investments, banking or finance. And that is the very purpose of the submission. Along with me, to enlighten our audience today, which is absolutely mind-boggling. Good number of audience, institutions, individuals, both the sides are attending this. We have the great privilege, and I personally want to welcome His Excellency Mr. Saad Sharif, Ambassador, Embassy of State of Qatar in Australia. His Excellency Jonathan Muir, Ambassador, Australian Embassy, Qatar, and my good friend, Mr. Moin Anwar, Trade and Investment Commissioner. He has been supporting our mission since 2012, ever since we planned to commission our, the minute diplomat ties were put in place in 2012 in Canberra. We are there. And that's what our alignment and synergistic vision is all about. Our intentions are genuine. We want to further live up to the expectation of both the sides. We want to make sure, time and again, we will commit ourselves as a premier financial institutions to promote the bilateral values. And then we will have a question answers. I'm sure there will be enough questions through online real time. We are here to do these sessions to your satisfaction and create values. And within 90 minutes, we'll try our level best to answer. Otherwise, we will respond to you post this event to ensure that you are fully clarified in terms of substance, what you need to understand about these bilateral opportunities. That is precisely my preface. I'm going to showcase, as a last speaker, overall opportunities between Qatar and Australia in bilateral terms. Now, let me have the great pleasure in welcoming His Excellency Mr. Saad Al Sharif, Ambassador, Embassy of State of Qatar and Australia, to say his words.
Thank you, Dr. Seth Rahman, for the invitation to participate in the seminar. And I would like to thank all participants. Qatar has a strong economy, and the World Bank expects the Qatar's economy to grow by 3% in this year, 2021. Also, Qatar is the second market in the Middle East for Australia. And Qatar has investment in Australia in agriculture and solar energy and real estate and other investment. We encourage Australian investors to discover investment opportunities in Qatar. Thank you all. I apologize for leaving you now due to other commitment, Your Excellency. This is, I sent also the record video, include all bilateral between Qatar and Australia.
Thank you.
Thanks again. See you next time, Dr. Seth Rahman.
Thank you, Excellency, Mr. Saad. We're delighted to have you. We will keep our dialogue ongoing and try to bring in the bilateral opportunities as professional intermediaries, as a premier financial institution. Now, we can move on to the next speaker. Is there any video that's been shown? Now let's move on to the next diplomat, His Excellency Mr. Jonathan Moore, Ambassador, Australian Embassy, Qatar. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sitharaman and Hilton, and Excellency Ambassador Al Sharif. Look, it's great to be here today. Very grateful for the opportunity and the invitation. As the ambassador before me mentioned, Qatar is Australia's second largest trading partner in the Middle East and North Africa. That's not a well-known fact. That's counting two-way goods and services trade. It did tick down a little through the pandemic, down to 2.08 billion, down from a high, as Hilton mentioned, of 2.33 billion Australian dollars. And Qatar's investment in Australia, we estimate at around 3 billion in property, logistics, energy in Australia. So while low energy prices and the pandemic have been disruptive to trade and to economies, macroeconomic resilience in Qatar meant that it weathered 2020 and 2021 better than most. So while it contracted last year at an estimated 3%, this was lower than the regional average. And the lifting of the blockade in January this year by its neighbours means that Qatar should have an additional fillip to its economy in 2021. So most analysts predict a solid rebound in 2021 of about 3%, and then growth ahead of the 2022 FIFA World Cup at around 4 to 5%. Solid and region-leading growth estimates. All three ratings agencies have recently reaffirmed Qatar's investment grade status, citing strong projected revenues and large foreign currency reserves. And a recent rebound in LNG prices, I think, also bodes very well for Qatar's outlook. So while Qatar is a sizable market by value, I'd like the audience really to keep in mind that it also matters as a global logistics hub for trade, tourism, and increasingly finance, which is probably most relevant to this forum. So for the Australian government, our overall economic and commercial priorities remain growth and diversification of exports to Qatar, increased sovereign and private investment in Australia, including funding for research and innovation, as well as reduced non-tariff barriers for Australian goods and services. So on priority one, growing and diversifying exports, so we'll continue to focus our energies on supporting 4 priority export sectors. Those are food and agriculture, infrastructure, resources and energy, and advanced manufacturing and defence. So despite a really successful drive to develop a domestic agriculture sector, Qatar's climate will mean that quality supply chains will remain important, including from Australia. With Qatar's economy now extensively decoupled from other regional hubs since 2017, Australia's direct food exports to Qatar have grown very rapidly, facilitated by Qatar's high-quality port and airport infrastructure. Qatar continues spending on infrastructure essential to the FIFA World Cup 2022. While the largest of these projects are nearing completion, there are still smaller services related opportunities around. Opportunities are also growing as the infrastructure build tapers off. There's growing opportunities in facilities management as we move from construction to maintenance phase. Even prior to COVID, Qatar was expanding its health infrastructure and has sought Australian expertise in designing health facilities. And I think most notably for the future, Qatar recently made its final investment decision to expand LNG production from 77 to 110 million tonnes per annum, with an initial expenditure of around $28 billion US. And this provides big long-term opportunities for Australian engineers and LNG technology companies, many of which have a long history in Qatar, but there are plenty of opportunities for those who've not yet taken the plunge. So Qatar's engineering and construction conglomerates tell me frequently they want to bring Australian LNG expertise to market to be as partners for these subcontractors as they flow through the economy. On priority two, increasing investment. So QIA and its subsidiaries, Husod Food and Brass Power, they've made a great start in the Australian market with around 3 billion. That's our estimate in Australian property, logistics, energy and agriculture. QIA's strategy is there. It's keen to invest in the market. It's wanting to expand its footprint in Australia. And as part of this, and I think really notable for the audience, is that it's recently established an Asia regional office in Singapore, making it even easier for investors to engage from Australia. Qatar has been a major source of research funding over the past few years with 24 Australian universities undertaking joint research projects with Qatar Foundation. And I think going forward, while Qatar's incubator space holds significant promise for Australian startups and scale-ups seeking capital, Qatar is particularly seeking partners in fintech in line with Australia's strengths. And just to quickly cover off on non-tariff barriers, so we continue to work with Qatar on the concept of increasing beef shelf life, which would reduce the cost of beef to the Qatar market and make it more accessible to the Australian exporters. And this would be in line with GCC standards. And we're also working together on reducing red tape for exporters by bringing Qatari authorities onto Australia's online document verification system. I thought I might finish briefly with a bit of a 2020-21 highlights so far, the last 12 months. So despite the pandemic's disruption, the annual flow of 2A goods remained robust, highlighting the strength and complementarity of our economies. The crisis provided opportunity to increase food exports with continuity of Qatar Airways, enabling Australia to fill disrupted supply chains, and by and large, these supply chains have remained, even though the world has emerged from this trade crisis in 2020. So during the crisis, Qatar stepped in to become a re-exporter of Australian produce in ways that we've not seen before, enabled by its excellent infrastructure, particularly aviation. Kuwait, Jordan, Oman being some of the countries that were part of that emerging re-export market. So this business model is definitely one to watch. The Qatari government and the private sector are aware of these opportunities, and I think there are great opportunities for Australian companies to be part of that, and particularly in bulk commodities as well. So Australian engineers, including GHD and others, they secured major projects to build Qatar's COVID-19 health infrastructure in the early crisis periods, and GHD also completed the design of Doha's new passenger cruise terminal. Aspen Health is a major provider of health services in Australia. It has an ongoing presence here and was a major player in the procurement of PPE to support Qatar's COVID response. And as mentioned previously, Qatar's Nebraska Power took a 49% stake in Australia's largest wind farm, which is Stockyard Hill in Victoria. And into the new economy, Australian fintech incubator Hatch Quarter signed an MOU with Qatar Fintech Hub, administered by the Qatar Development Bank. And Australia's Curtin University and Qatar Foundation launched a major joint initiative to tackle shared corrosion and materials challenges in the oil and gas industry. So, in conclusion, the prospects for future economic and commercial collaboration are strong. Qatar is a market that requires patience, relationship building, and presence in country. And for those willing to engage on these terms, there are plenty of opportunities to pursue. And with that, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. Well done, Your Excellency, Mr. Jonathan Bird, Ambassador, Australian Embassy, Qatar. Good summary, and I think you gave plenty of food for thought and what has happened. And there are bilateral opportunities growing. It's not only in terms of trade, we have seen the reflection of Qatar Foundation getting into sustainable value creation through Qatar Research Foundation, and academia coming together. Many universities from Australia coming and adding value for knowledge sharing, which is going to be a greater component for our bilateral partnership. Now, there are many questions that have come. I'm going to ask you before that. Our Excellency, the Qatari Ambassador to Australia, Mr. Saad Sharif video is ready. We want to play the video before I ask a few questions which has come already, and to Ambassador Jonathan. Let me play first Qatari Ambassador video for a minute. Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Seth Armin, CEO of Doha Bank, for the invitation to speak with you. I would also like to welcome and acknowledge my friend, His Excellency Mr. Jonathan Muir, Australian Ambassador in Qatar. It is a pleasure to be with you all. For 41 years, The state of Qatar and Australia have enjoyed friendly and cooperative relationships enforced by shared commitments for the prosperity of our two nations. The two countries are trading partners. Two ways. Merchandise trade value 141 billion Australia is Qatar's 12th import market and is 26th export market. Qatar has developed a knowledge-based economy underpinned by Qatar's Vision 2030. Among its aims is achieving sustainable, diversified, and competitive non-oil economic growth and linking Qatar's private sector with the world. Today, Qatar stands as an attractive choice for foreign investor and business partnerships, with a robust financial regulations and best international practices. The Investment Act allows foreign investment in all economic sectors, up to 100% of capital and other tax incentives. I would like also to refer to the fact that Qatar is the first country in the Middle East to introduce a non-discriminatory minimum wages. Further, Qatar free zones offer great opportunities to operate into the region and the world. The modernized logistics and transport industry in Qatar offer a wealth of infrastructure and dedicated services for connectivity for people and businesses. The sector is expected to maintain a strong upward trajectory in the coming years, supported by air cargo, seaports, and land storages, featuring a global hub for time-sensitive products and services. The logistics village is a big promise for SMEs. Friends, there are many natural synergies exist between Qatar and Australia. We are committed to support the business people's efforts to explore and capture the potentials for complementaries for post-pandemic economic recovery. There is a room for growth in many interfaces in the financial sectors: education, agribusiness, infrastructure, digital economy, and logistics and supply chains. Thank you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency Saad Al Sharif. Again, a profound summary of what exactly Qatar is all about and what is in store. Now, let me get back to His Excellency Ambassador, Mr. Jonathan. A few questions when he was addressing came. One is, let me read the questions online. Somebody by name Isa Shavis. When we'll have the free trade agreement between Australia and Qatar? Your Excellency, would you like to comment on it?
Yeah, sure. Look, at this stage, it's not under discussion. What is potential, most would be aware that there were GCC Australia FTA discussions back in the 2000s, which were suspended in 2009 in January this year at the Al Ula Declaration. Australia was named as a potential FTA partner by the GCC in that declaration, and we are again examining the opportunity to potentially re-engage with the GCC on that. But in terms of a bilateral FTA, that's not under discussion at this stage.
Probably Mr. Isa, Ambassador has clarified. Another question has come to you from a different audience. There is a bilateral limit on flights between Australia and Qatar Airways, which limits additional flights. How do we change to growth in air travel and cargo or freighter?
Yeah, look, I'd just like to express my thanks to Qatari Airways for its efforts during the pandemic. It's really been a very critical player for Australia, both in returning Australians home and providing opportunities for exporters to continue to service their markets. So they are excellent partners for Australia. They've been excellent interlocutors for me, and I'm very grateful for it. I think there's a bright future for Qatari Airways in the Australian markets. It's something we discuss regularly, and at this stage, I probably can't really say any more than that. But I know they're very committed to the market, and Australia is very grateful for their service that they provide and the commercial opportunities they provide to Australian exporters.
Thank you. I think Qatar Airways has done an exemplary job. My following videos I'm going to show, and definitely the audience will appreciate. The diplomats walk on the knife edge. They don't unless they have full information, they can't clarify in total terms. I think ambassadors laid out very clearly the overall opportunity. Excellency, again, how has COVID-19 brought new synergies between both the countries?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, and they have, and it's mainly been in that, as I mentioned, the opportunities because of Qatari Airways and its commitment to the Australian market to lean into the crisis and continue to fly, provide those cargo, and in fact, add additional freight flights during that period, has provided Australia opportunity to fill those disrupted supply chains. So food in particular has seen a benefit through the crisis period. There's a lot of Australian produce here, and those numbers have gone up since the crisis started, and have stayed up as the crisis has eased. So that's the main one. But,
yeah. The next question is: you did mention about Australian investors' interest in Qatar's fintech. Do you see more Australian fintech companies are collaborating in Qatar?
I do. Yeah, as mentioned, Hatch Quarter has signed a formal MOU with Qatar Fintech Hub, which is part of QDB. So I'd expect that to be a leading platform going forward. It's something that's expressed to me by banks, including the government bank. There is a strong appetite. There's a recognition of Australia's strength in fintech. That's clear globally. And there's an appetite to bring Australian fintech to market or to the incubator space. So those wanting to engage, there's definitely opportunity there. But as mentioned, it's a nascent incubator space, growing rapidly. So I think now's the time to engage.
Right. One more question. There are questions pouring. Another 3-4 questions. I'm not going to take all the questions. This is the last question for His Excellency. What is the potential for tourism between both the countries?
Well, this has grown rapidly, obviously disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I think we will see a rapid escalation of passenger movements once we all emerge from COVID. We emerge into a new reality of living with COVID, but until that time, I think the opportunities are obviously limited. Australia is very much focused on the domestic tourism market now, with borders difficult to transit as we manage the COVID pandemic and roll out the vaccine program. Once that's over, I think we'll see those numbers go up quite rapidly. And with Qatari Airways again facilitating those flights, we've seen numbers of Qataris visiting Australia increase quite significantly over the last 5 years.
Excellency, thank you very much. Gentlemen, those who are watching, I know you have been asking questions, and for want of time, I have to move on to the next speaker. Thank you, Your Excellency. Let me move on to the next speaker, Mr. Moin Anwar, Trade and Investment Commissioner, Middle East, New South Wales, Government of Australia. So Moin has come from a very distinguished discipline. I'm sure he will enlighten the audience to say more about the opportunities in terms of trade or investments. Here we go. My dear friend, Mr. Moin.
Thank you, Dr. Sitaraman. I'll just share my screen. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon if you're in Australia and good morning if you're in Qatar. It's been a great privilege to have been invited to this session by Doha Bank. As Dr. Sitaraman mentioned, we've been part of the journey of Doha Bank into Australia, and we are in fact privileged to have been working together and making sure that we can actually facilitate the trade and investment linkages between Australia and Qatar. For those who are not familiar with New South Wales, just a snapshot. New South Wales is Australia's largest economy. The value is over $500 billion Australian dollars. And if you put it into perspective, the New South Wales economy is larger than Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong, or perhaps the same size as the Thai economy. Sydney is the capital city of New South Wales, and that's where a lot of our government offices are based, and the image which you see at the back is basically an image taken during the Vivid Sydney Festival, which happens in Sydney, which is basically a festival of innovation and lights. Looking into the New South Wales economy more closely, it accounts for a third of the Australian economic output and is home to nearly 8.2 million Australians. So it's obviously a sizable state in its own right. We are a diversified economy. Services is obviously a key sector in New South Wales along with technology. And as a result, there's a low exposure to commodity pricing. And when you talk about service sectors, the areas where we have strong expertise, that includes financial, professional, education, property, information, media, telecoms, and the other new economic sectors when you look at things like EVs and all that stuff. The or the goods side of things, agriculture, construction, resourcing, and advanced manufacturing are also quite key to the New South Wales economy. And that is an area where we put a lot of efforts in terms of promoting that to the global economy. The major merchandise exports from New South Wales include copper, beef, coal, aluminum. Primary export destinations are Japan, China, and Korea, and while the major destination import countries are China, USA, and Germany. However, we've actually seen, as Ambassador Muir mentioned earlier, that the relationship which we see developing through Qatar into the region is critical, and that obviously supports our exporters in this part of the world. More focusing from a Qatar perspective, I would echo Ambassador Sharif's comments and Ambassador Muir's comments that it's been a successful engagement. It's an engagement which is growing, and we see great potential going forward. Me personally, I've been involved in the trade and investment linkages between Qatar and Australia since 2000, and that's the time when Qatar had secured the Asian Games in 2000, which were held in 2006. I remember at that time, GHT was one of the key companies which was looking at developing the infrastructure for the Asian Games. New South Wales was also the one of the early recipients of investment in the agriculture sector from Qatar, and this has actually expanded to include logistics, real estate, and infrastructure investments in New South Wales. In fact, as a statistic, amongst the Australian states, New South Wales was the first state to receive investment in the area of real estate and infrastructure, which was utilities from Qatar Investment Authority, so which we are quite proud of and look to building that into the future. As mentioned earlier, Doha Bank selected Sydney to base its to have its presence in Australia, and we are obviously quite thankful for the commitment Doha Bank has placed in Sydney to base its presence. However, the game changer was basically when Qatar Airways started flying non-stop between Doha and Sydney. And the image which you see is basically the first flight of Qatar Airways flying over the landmark Sydney Opera House and the Harbour Bridge before landing at Sydney Kingsford Airport. So this is indeed obviously quite a unique picture of the airliner flying over of Sydney before landing at the airport. This connection, where I would basically like to highlight, is basically allowed a lot of our exporters to access the market in Qatar directly, and that's been key for our food exporters, because prior to this there were no direct contacts between Sydney and Doha, and they basically anything which was exported by air had to go through a secondary point. So this obviously was key and greatly supported during the challenges we faced during the pandemic. From a Qatar perspective, we've been engaged from a long perspective, from a pretty long time, as I said, going back since the 2000s, and the sectors where we actually found opportunities, and still Qatar offer opportunities for New South Wales Australian exporters are food and beverage, building construction, health and medtech, and much more. And this is basically, as the economy develops, it grows, we feel that our engagement can actually be increased into new sectors. Some of the brands, from Australia, which were quite common, and these companies are based in New South Wales. Obviously, one was Bridges in the early days, Jones & Grocer, among others. So, in short, I can say that the engagement has been fruitful, beneficial, and we look forward to developing that into the future. Turning more from an investment perspective, and this is basically when you're talking investment, we are talking about investment into Australia. From our perspective as the New South Wales government, we have recently created special activation precincts, and these are basically business hubs across New South Wales, where we are actually working alongside industry to develop and attract overseas investors. These special activation precincts are basically new developments where we need basically a range of investors to come in, and this could include logistics players, energy, clean energy, advanced manufacturing, mineral processing, as well as food production. So I invite investors from Qatar, if you're keen to invest into some of these new upcoming special activation precincts, myself and our team in Sydney would be delighted to support any of your interest in those sectors. And the most important part to this is obviously from the New South Wales government, we are supporting these precincts through our own investments and enabling the basic infrastructure so that overseas investors, when they come in, they can actually be facilitated through the investment process, and we can actually provide the sort of opportunities they're looking at. So again, we are very engaged. We're keen to be engaged with investors from Qatar in our special activation precincts, and we'd be more than delighted through Doha Bank to see how we can actually take this interest forward with the interested parties. Turning to the next one, and again, this is a major development taking place in Sydney. So this is the Western Sydney Aerotropolis. So this is basically a brand new airport and an adjacent city being developed in Western Sydney, which is the Western Parkland City. And this airport, once it's operational in 2026, will again be a significant contributor to international trade, because this airport will be operating 24/7, so there'll be no night curfew. And adjacent to this, where we have the Western Parkland City Authority, there'll be a range of industries which focus on food processing, advanced manufacturing, defense, aerospace, education, and research, and all the affiliated sectors. So again, over here, we are keen to engage with investors who might have an interest in the projects in the Aerotropolis. The airport is being developed by the Australian government, so that's a federal government project. However, all the supporting infrastructure around the airport is being developed by the New South Wales government. And from our perspective, we are quite keen to engage with investors from Qatar to see if we can actually pinpoint opportunities where we can actually engage with them and take it forward. As Ambassador Muir mentioned, there is a strong interest from sovereign wealth funds in Qatar. In Australia, we are having encouraging discussions with Qatar Investment Authority, who've actually invested significantly in Australia to look at more opportunities where we can actually see can suit their requirements. And this is basically, before we move on to the trade side, is basically an image of the new developments across Sydney. So the blue circle, which is on the right of your screen, is the existing Sydney city. Parramatta would basically become part of Central Greater Sydney, and the Western Sydney development is basically on the left side. And this is where all the developments are happening with the airport plan to by 2026. Turning to trade, and this is more about talking about opportunities from Australia into Qatar. As I mentioned earlier, some of our traditional sectors, which are food and beverage, building and construction, education, training, healthcare, and wellness. These were the sectors which I think laid the foundation of the connectivity between Qatar and Australia. I still think that there are opportunities in these sectors from an Australian export perspective. And again, we are more than delighted to work with companies in Qatar who might have an interest to identify Australian suppliers, or companies in New South Wales who might be keen to do business over there and have the right sort of expertise. Turning to the new sectors again, and this does not apply just to New South Wales, but across Australia, there's a lot of significant capabilities in the technology sector. So when you look at new sectors, you're looking at ag tech, food tech, fintech, medtech. So within the ag tech side of things, given that Qatar's objectives are to increase local or domestic food production, we have significant capabilities in the area of sustainable food production, and that includes things like sustainable water or usage in farming techniques. Food tech, we're looking at doing things like protein replacement, meatless plant solutions and all that stuff. Fintech, again, Australia is one of the early starters within the digital banking, and one of these banks has recently signed up to provide investment services to crypto investors, so which is again a leading sort of a cutting edge technology. And from a medtech perspective, which has obviously become more important during the recent times, is smart health monitoring solutions and digital health. So I guess I think, and if you're talking of technology, these are sectors where, for instance, transfer of technology is more seamless. It can happen remotely. And I think this is an area where I would encourage organizations from Qatar to look at Australia if you're looking at expertise within different technology spaces, to consider us and give us an opportunity to see if we can actually provide you some solutions within your technology requirements. Finally, staying connected, and this is something which has become more important during the current times, and obviously some countries have recovered from the pandemic challenges, some countries are going through it, and therefore, we're all looking forward to overcome the current challenges and resume business as normal. Although I understand that a lot of things would change by the time we are out of the pandemic. However, I can say on both sides there's been an eagerness to continue business, and that's been important for us as government to facilitate. There's a strong interest on commercial side on both sides to continue business, and we are here to support you. I've also noticed that during the past a year and a half, the virtual meeting platforms have been extensively used, and I would encourage companies on both sides to engage with your business partner using the virtual meeting platforms, because that's been a great way of sharing experiences and taking things forward. And the next is basically advice to companies in Australia. Given the pandemic, obviously, market sizes are shrinking in certain sectors. So therefore, your competitors are trying to maintain their market share, as well as new companies are trying to enter. So Therefore, it is important that you're committed to the market and see the best opportunity to grow your market presence. Again, for both companies in Qatar as well as in Australia, planning becomes essential, because this is not only essential from a raw material procurement process, but also planning your logistics. And it's all about cost versus efficiency. While we've seen, for instance, there's been a significant increase in the air freight cost, the Australian government has supported Australian exporters through IFM, which is basically to manage their export costs. But at the same time, we're also seeing now that there's a shortage of containers globally, and therefore that is having implications on sea freights from Australia to the region. So again, the important thing is plan, be connected with your business partners, and that's probably the best way you can ensure business continuity. Finally, I'd also like to say that we've noticed over the past 18 months that from a government and commercial perspective, the appetite for adopting new technologies and solutions has been great. And this is something which I would encourage companies in Qatar and Australia to have those discussions where they have expertise in technology and what could be brought to Qatar. And finally, as all of us have mentioned, we are here to assist businesses in Qatar and Australia. They are actually our real heroes in making things happen. So by all means, leverage us. We are here to support you. With this, I'll pass on the floor back to Dr. Sita Raman, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Moin Anwar. What a brilliant summary of the opportunities in terms of trade or investments in the current context. And he has enlightened us with absolute specific reorganization which is taking place in Australia. There are a lot of thinking required in the business side to see how we can come together. I have many questions. I have picked up only one or two questions now. Mr. Samir Joshi is calling and asking for what opportunities do you see in developing sustainable energy project between Qatar and Australia? Ambassador has already mentioned this, how they are working with Qatar Foundation. And either His Excellency or Moin Anwar, would you like to respond?
Sure. So within sustainable energy, we've actually got some expertise in the area of green and renewable energy. And this includes to, for instance, installing the solar panel facades on building to basically make the building sustainable in their own right. We've got new technologies which are basically energy saving, and this could also help in improving the sort of the lifespan of the building as well as making them more green. So again, if there is an interest, more than happy to engage with the gentleman and see how we could actually take this thing forward.
His name is Samir Joshi. Mr. Joshi, you've heard from Mr. Moin, and stay in touch with him, and perhaps you'll get better elucidations. Now, one last question, which I have. There are plenty of questions. Gentlemen, whoever raised the questions, please forgive me. For a point of time, I have to limit the questions, which I'm only one questions I have. Apart from agriculture, which are the sectors which will attract investment potential between both the countries in the immediate future?
I think from my perspective, technology would be the main sector, because we've got a quite an extensive ecosystem of research happening, and some of the technology might translate into advanced manufacturing. But where I'm seeing a greater engagement between Qatar and Australia is basically the advanced manufacturing or the sectors which need that higher level of engineering and research. That's the area to focus on. Obviously, the traditional sectors like F&B would continue, but that's the new sectors to look at.
Yeah. You did sum it up. Tech, food tech, again, fintech and medtech. These are, fintech is a greater opportunity, I suppose, you did mention in your presentation as such. Gentlemen, please look at it. That's what exactly the words from Mr. Moin. Now, after my presentation, nearly for 25 to 30 minutes, if there are opportunities to take further questions, we would love to respond. Till then, I have to get on with the structured agenda. 9:57 is what I'm supposed to start. 9:55. Now I'm getting on with the bilateral opportunities and macroeconomic fundamentals of both the countries. Here is my presentation. Now, let's talk first the global. There are three components we have to look at. And global is very important. We are living in an interconnected world, interdependent world, and essentially, we need to make sure that we come to terms what's happened resonates in one part of the world impacting other. So I'm going to just look at the big picture, whether it is IMF or World Bank, monetary policy or fiscal policy at a global level. Then I'm going to move on to Qatar. Qatar has done tremendous work in the last 1.5 years. Enough re-regulation, market liberalization. I'm going to showcase the opportunities. And again, the same perspective, we look at Australia in terms of economic fundamentals and the decisions taken in the last 18 months and how we see anchor potential opportunities in multiple form and substance. That's what the summary is going to be with me. 4 of my colleagues are also joining, the head of Treasury Investments, Mr. Gudi Staleholt. We have a representation from wholesale banking, Mr. Ahmed Naji. We have a trade expert, Mr. Namit Gatani. We have international head of international banking, who deals with FIs and financial institutions in tandem in both sides. So he is there to represent. And again, when it comes to retail, we are here to showcase our opportunities as well. When if you're coming to Qatar, whether SME or individuals, we have transaction-based processing. We will give the digital advantage, convenience, and cost-effective mechanism. So this is the purpose of the session as such. And the diplomats have said what they have to say. And again, the Trade Commissioner has mentioned trade as well as investment opportunity. Let me connect all this and give you my summary. The first one, we have to understand the global economy. Now, when it comes to global economy, we need to recognize it is not an easy 2020. We had a contraction in global terms. The sudden, pandemic has destabilized the global framework. The governance was disturbed. Global governance was disturbed to a large extent. Gone are the days of 2008, where it was only liquidity issue. Liquidity crisis moved into funding to solvency, and perhaps it impacted certain sovereigns. Now, this is not a simple crisis. It's a transformational change, is what I would like to say it here. In global terms, if you look at the World Bank outcome, they have redefined 3 times the indicators, economic indicators. Global growth, if you look at objectively, what IMF has said in the last year, October, in the annual fund meeting, which is virtual again, redefined in January, Davos didn't take place. So the indications came from IMF was different from what they said, because we thought the game was over last year. So we'll be resurging in terms of investments. It didn't happen as much as it should. Now, again, they revised it in the spring meeting in April and June. Clearly, the advanced economies have accelerated their performance. That's indication we got because vaccinations have gone into the right, maximum space in advanced economies, developing economies, or emerging markets, which were hitherto performing exceedingly well, over 60-65% of the incremental GDP come from the emerging markets, and may slow down because the vaccine administration was a bigger issue. So the revised target came from both IMF as well as World Bank. But that was a revelation. If you look at the big picture, the final summary, which came in July, IMF said the global growth is not 6.4%, it's going to be 6% in global terms. Advanced economies 5.6%, and emerging market will report around 6.3% as against 6.7%, for the reasons which I mentioned to you. Now, what do? We need inflation. We need to make sure employment comes in. So Federal Reserve was contemplating time and again whether to increase the interest rate or not. they put the step forward and then pull it back because it's a cumulative fulfillment, whether it is economic momentum or inflation, and again, employment have to synchronize to make sure you can inflate. You have seen there are reasons why we need to increase the interest rate. That was the starting point for the monetary policy to come to terms. Now we have reasons to believe that this is not an easy task. Now, Fed came with a clear comment. What's the latest one? As good as early this month, end of last month.
At the FOMC's recent July meeting, I was of the view, as were most participants, that if the economy evolved broadly as anticipated, it could be appropriate to start reducing the pace of asset purchases this year. The intervening month has brought more progress in the form of a strong employment report for July, but also the further spread of the Delta variant. We will be carefully assessing incoming data and the evolving risks. Even after our asset purchases end, our elevated holdings of longer-term securities will continue to support accommodative financial conditions. The timing and pace of the coming reduction in asset purchases will not be intended to carry a direct signal regarding the timing of interest rate liftoff, for which we have articulated a different and substantially more stringent test. We have said that we will continue to hold the target range for the federal funds rate at its current level until the economy reaches conditions consistent with maximum employment and inflation has reached 2% and is on track to moderately exceed 2% for some time. We have much ground to cover to reach maximum employment, and time will tell whether we have reached 2% inflation on a sustainable basis.
Whether we will reach 2% inflation on a sustainable basis, what is worse? Fed cutting bond. They have been doing bond buying programs, and they have to cut it. Tapering is coming. So long as the economic progress continues, it will happen before the year end. It doesn't mean rate increase or looming. And that's what we need to understand. That's a clue between the words you read. Interest rate hike based on maximum employment progress. And that's the situation. Let me come to Qatar for in terms of the overall spectrum. Qatar's economic momentum, as I said, it is, as was mentioned, and we have seen, we have taken oil on a conservative basis on the fiscal side. We're going to report around 166 billion. That was the original conception when last year, November, when we had the indications. And we were supposed to have around inflation of around 2.4%. Current account will be a surplus. Now, fiscal also will be a surplus. Look at the oil price. We've taken 40, and it is now more. Qatar economic growth, 3%. And essentially next year, it should reach 4.1%. These are indications by global missions, by IMF and World Bank. Qatar COVID-19 cases, if you look at it, it's around 235,000. As I mentioned in my preface, around 603. Healthcare system has been well engined, and they perform exceedingly well. Now, so far we have done 2.2 million. That's almost 77% of the total population. Eligible population is much more. Watch this 2030 vision. Now, in substance, the economic vision, or the social mission, or the environmental mission, or the human mission, if you converge in all this 2030 vision, which is fine-tuned with the development strategy, time and again, as Hannes Emiras said it in St. Petersburg International Forum. So we have plenty of prospects. The long-term plan is visible, and there are short, medium-range plans are being laid out with that purpose in mind. So that's where we need to recognize the opportunities. When it comes to fiscal policy, if you look at the revenue, that's around 160 billion. Expenditure, 195 billion. So deficit, you're going to have around 35 billion. That's based on $40 per barrel. Education, healthcare, infrastructure. They're all talking between 15 to 20 billion Qatar riyal, 17.4, 17.8 respectively. And again, your infrastructure is going to be modernized in multiple forms, not necessarily confined to 2022 alone. A budget was based on our conservative estimates, and both the quarters, if you look at it, we have investable surplus coming in, and that's why I said fiscal you will have a surplus. Now, when it comes to banking sector, we need to understand banking is doing well. If you look at our lending growth, it's around 9.2%. We have done the first 7 months. And again, government has taken steps to postpone the installments and interest. That's also a part of the credit creation. If you look at the overall value advantage for debt servicing, they gave the benefit on account of liquidity stress in the global scene. Everyone has had a synchronized monetary policy, I should say. The government sector has grown by 16%. Real estate has grown by 4%. Consumption has grown by 4%. And again, contracting has grown by nearly 7%. And when it comes to services, that's phenomenal. 9% it has grown. Trading is growing around 6%. And deposits also has grown nearly 5.5%. So we have tremendous momentum in the banking sector. That gives the financial stability in tandem. They also issued a new currency note that is also meaningful. When it comes to hydrocarbon, hydrocarbon side, we have plenty of the reasons to believe this is going to further enhance the revenues. It's a considered vision. It's a world largest project of nearly 40 billion. It was, of course, Northfield East and South. 29.5 billion was the first phase of it that has been already announced. And Qatar plans to boost its energy production 126 million tons a year, by 2027. Now, first phase is already on, 77 to 110. The next phase will come, 110 to 126. Watch this. I'll take a look at the.
As far as the Northfield expansion projects, we have two projects, Northfield East, which we just announced sanctioning, and the Northfield South. So the Northfield East would take us from 77 million tons to 110 million tons per annum. And then Northfield South, which we'll announce early next year, will take us to 126 million tons. We've announced our strategy. Our strategy is very clear and is defined. These are very robust projects. We just mentioned last week that the total project cost for Northfield East is $28.75 billion to produce 32 million tons per annum of LNG by 2025. This is one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive project on the planet today. And we're very proud of that. And we're moving ahead for our long-term vision of reaching 126 and maybe more.
Maybe more. So oil, gas, and petrochemicals are all put in one fabric. It's going to be huge in terms of recurring revenues. And energy security is a major concern in the emerging markets. Everyone knows this. We have seen long-term contracts. China is signing. Vietnam is buying. Bangladesh is scaling up. India is changing the energy mix. There are better opportunities, private side as well as public side. Now, so plenty of reasons to believe Qatar's revenue generation is well planned and it is going to grow. Qatar cabinet announced.
If you look at what people don't talk about today, 30% approximately of the world power is actually fired by coal. Okay, if you take the Northfield expansion NFE project that we just sanctioned last week, just the NFE, not the NFS, and you just take that project and you say, I'm going to replace that volume of gas to fire up electric generation instead of coal, you actually reduce the CO2 emission in the world by 125 million tons per annum. That is equivalent to 25 million cars emissions in a year.
Yes, we're all looking for a greener world, isn't it? Building a green economy has been the top-notch mission of United Nations now. So plenty of reasons to believe we are in the right direction. It's energy efficient, environment friendly. Now, there are many decisions taken last 1 year, 1.5 years I mentioned to you. Qatar Cabinet approves the support for the private sector, for even SME for that matter. There are freebies, there are concessional interest, and again, making sure every sectors which are impacted has been supported in tandem. On the trade side, if you have to understand the dynamics, now we have seen Qatar trade surplus has grown 185% between June 2021 to last year, June 20, and the number is mind-boggling. We have seen the reflection in the details. And when it comes to FIFA 2022, everyone is excited about it. Take a look at this film.
Especially considering that we're coming out of COVID-19, I genuinely believe it'll be the first global celebration where we will collectively have overcome COVID and we will collectively be able to celebrate this tournament and create a lasting bond. And that's why I think it's when I always thought it was previously significant, I believe the significance has become even more.
Hassan Tawadi, the Secretary General of 2022, brilliant administrator in substance. So we have absolute promising, relationship in the market across the globe. And that's what the leadership is all about, and it's all going in the right direction. When it comes to vaccinated flight, Qatar, His Excellency Ambassador Jonathan was mentioning how it is the partnership on the aviation side is growing. Now, Qatar has experimented it, and it has been a good jet.
These Qatar Airways staff members are all fully vaccinated, and so are all these passengers. The airline wants to reassure millions of people that air travel is safe even during the pandemic.
We want to be the first airline in the world to do a fully vaccinated flight, both including passengers and the crew. And Qatar has a very aggressive vaccination program, and so we at the airline level have a very aggressive vaccination program. We have vaccinated nearly 20,000 of our employees, and we vaccinate around 1,000 employees every day.
Yeah, watch this again. And International Airport.
Welcome to Doha from every one of us, even those working quietly behind the scenes, so you can relax and enjoy the perfect break in your journey. And when you leave with a smile, we know our day's work is done.
That's what it is. They have witnessed double-digit growth in number of. We look at the seaport, that's growing. Number of ships have doubled, and the airport is doing exceedingly well. And that's what the reflection we are seeing. Let me move on to the Australian economy again. We have a very good partnership in the making as such. On the monetary side, the Reserve Bank of Australia has done a terrific job. They're not buying $5 billion from now on. They're going to do $4 billion bond buying program. But still, they're supplementing it. The 2024 yield on the bond has been put in right spectrum. So they are in the right direction in terms of monetary policy. And we have seen fiscal policy has been very well played, I should say that, because when I do the comparative framework, let us look at the economics, underlying economics in terms of the overall momentum. Australian economy is supposed to produce around 1.6 trillion, perhaps. Next year it may move to 1.7. The growth is around 400% this year. That's a minimum they're targeting. Inflation is under control with 1.7%. And again, with the current account surplus, nearly in billion terms, it is US dollar terms, I should say around 38 billion. That's the number IMF is saying. When it comes to percentage of GDP to GDP, if you look at it, it's around 2.3%. So current account, there's a surplus. And when it comes to COVID case, they manage it well. When it, overall, if you look at 63,000 cases, and the death is around 1,000. And when it comes to vaccination, 7.8 million people have been vaccinated, fully vaccinated, which is around 31%. So still moving in the right direction. The monetary policy, fiscal policy, central bank is, again, the bond buying programs are all going to help. If you look at the big picture, the third round of quantitative easing program they announced, and they are going to make sure the federal budget and the monetary policy is aligned. And that's more important. Government is spending, as I said in my preface, nearly 311 billion and 20 billion on the health support. And when it comes to economic stimulus, this is nearly 290 billion. Now, it has gone in multiple forms, nearing a billion. I should say around 880 million over 2 years to support the medicine they're going to spend. Government will provide 1.9 billion for the next 5 years for the vaccines. It's all been planned out. The budget provided also, I was reading the budget, 15.2 billion for infrastructure. That's good. That is, as a form of stimulus, the government count this as a COVID-related spending. I mean, that's an opportunity. We have to believe that prudent decision making is all about use this crisis and get your political alignment and making sure politics and economics converge, because long-term value creation is more important, and that's what precisely the government of Australia has done. Let me move on to the specifics in terms of the Doha Bank Australia, and I had the privilege of having a meeting with the Prime Minister Julia Gillard in 2011 during the Commonwealth Summit, and she asked me a question: when you're going to come to Australia? I said, I'm just waiting for our diplomat missions comes in. Then I see an opportunity. And again, Kevin Broad, the deputy also, as we were sitting in the dinner table, and we had an extensive discussion. Then I came back and I saw that we should, I saw the opportunity and then discussed with my board, and my board has endorsed, central bankers said yes. Now we need to scale it up. That's what our vision is all about. We opened our office, as Hilton has mentioned, in 2012, formally inaugurated. We did a fantastic job, thanks to Hilton. In Sydney Intercontinental, we showcased everything. What is the potential opportunities, and the things were moving in the right direction. And when blockade started in 2017, I was there. Perhaps Hilton can recall. We did a session to clarify there's nothing to worry as far as Qatari economic fundamentals are concerned. And we did a luncheon in Hotel Shangri-La. It was widely attended, and we had good flow of deputy mayor of Sydney was there. So it was a good function, good content, and again, we keep moving in the right direction. The last interface with various Australian banks for me, I'm waiting to go now. I want to visit and meet the business community banks and see whether we can scale up our operation itself further. That was in Cyprus in 2018. What a combination of trade exhibitions plus global financial institutions were all aggregating their products and services. Now let's look at the opportunities between these two blocks. That's very important. Now,
a late night arrival at Sydney Airport, one of the few international flights still operating. Qatar Airways flying to Australia's 5 major capital cities every day. Despite strict passenger limits, just 60 people into Adelaide, fewer in Perth and Sydney, 25 allowed into Brisbane, Melbourne, 0.
In every dark times, there are opportunities.
Each flight operates at a loss, but Qatar is finding a silver lining.
When we are going in with limited numbers of passengers, we are filling our bellies with cargo to serve the economic requirement of Australia, especially where all the borders are closed.
For parents like Michael Thomas, it's been a lifeline.
We saw all the flights cancelled. We couldn't actually get home to Perth. We were sort of told that we'd need to buy business class tickets. So instead of paying $6,000 for our flights, we'd be paying $24,000.
Stuck in Canada after the birth of his surrogate son, Riker, Qatar stepped up.
They're definitely an airline I didn't even know about. They weren't on my radar at all.
Surrogacy Australia's helped more than 50 Aussie couples to get in or out of the country in the past few months.
So it's been a lifesaver for us to have an airline like Qatar prepared to lose money, prepared to take these parents with them.
Passengers who can't afford soaring ticket prices remain stuck overseas as calls for the federal government to relax inbound restrictions grow louder.
We cannot let our passengers left behind like all the other airlines did.
What a spirited comment by His Excellency Bilateral and Synergistic. This shows the commitment on both sides. Now, when it comes to Australia, Qatar, bilateral trade, I want to bring in my colleague Namit Gatani. Now we know it's over to Namit. How do you see the growing opportunities? Can you briefly sum it up in a minute?
Yes, sir. Hi, good morning, sir. Thank you. And good morning to His Excellency and all distinguished guests. Hope I am audible.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there is already a strong bilateral relationship existing between Qatar and Australia, and so is the bilateral trade. And Mr. Moin has very beautifully summarized in his presentation the sectors. So I will not cover the sector part, and I will directly corroborate it with the trade finance banking products and services for just to make it easy for all the participants. For example, I think Doha Bank can participate in multiple banking trade finance products and services. For example, like Qatar is selling urea fertilizers, exporting to Australia, and Australian buyers are buying it. So in case of Australian buyers or buyers bank looking for any LC confirmations in Qatar, we can do it. We can do it in Qatar, as well as we can handle the similar transactions out of our international branches at other locations. Similarly, on the other hand, in case of imports where the buyer is situated in the countries where we operate branches, we can issue LCs for them. And with our strong network of banks in Australia, we can ensure a smooth facilitation of those import transactions either via LCs or bill collections, and we can support the entire import aspects of trade. Similarly, on the other hand, with the development of Qatar Free Trade Zone, in case of Australian conglomerates from mining and metallurgy sector, in case of they looking for any regional presence, we can support all kind of local transaction banking and trade services for such companies if they are interested and doing the regional distribution re-exports out of Qatar Free Zone. For project-related trade finance services, since Qatar is in the growing phase, developing various infrastructure projects, we can very well support all Australian companies providing any kind of technical or product or material supports in case they are looking for any guarantees, tender bonds, performance. We can support with those facilities to all such companies coming into Qatar.
Thank you.
To summarize, I think we are very well placed to cover all kind of aspects, be it imports or exports or projects related trade finance instruments. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, Qatar has consolidated its position and Australia's second largest trading. That's what His Excellency Jonathan also mentioned as such. Qatar Airways is again strengthening this partnership more than ever. But now we look forward to see what are the other bilateral opportunities. My colleague, Gurneet Singhoti is there. If Australian institutions or individual wants to invest in Qatar as a country of substance, how do you see the opportunity and where they should? Quickly.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon. There are a lot of opportunities here in Qatar for global investors and including Australian investors. If we put the investor glasses on our noses and look from outside into Qatar, there are two things that come immediately to mind: strong fundamentals and good relative value. And for those of us who do investment for a living, you know that good fundamentals and strong economic valuations do not always come together. So I would like to think that the case of Qatar is a unique one. When I talk about the strong fundamentals, the backdrop is the strong government, great foreign currency reserves, strong credit rating of AA, which is second to none, and that kind of sets the framework or the backdrop for the growth that we have experienced in the last few years. That growth comes with relative value, comes a lot of value for those who want to invest. We can do that in various areas and various pockets. Investing directly, as we discussed already today, is definitely an opportunity, great value there. Bond investors, they can also find something that is suited to their investment criteria here in Qatar. Last but not least, the Qatar Stock Exchange has been a very strong performer. We are operating and showcasing a product which we call the QETF, which is an exchange-traded fund. How does that work? It's effectively a note that any investor in the world can buy. And that note gives you a direct exposure to the blue chip companies in Qatar, the top 20 companies in Qatar, so to say. And why is that a good investment? It's very easy to execute, first of all. But secondly, this has been extremely well-performing asset over the last few years. If we look back some 3 years since the fund was being founded in mid-2018, the return of the Qatar Stock Exchange has been, I would say, nothing shy of fantastic. 41% has been the return of our fund. Of course, you cannot guarantee what the future will look like, but judging from the past, the future looks very bright. So for those who want to get exposure to the Qatar companies, the blue chip companies, I want to do it in an easy and quick fashion. The QETF notes are an excellent opportunity.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Gurmeet. It's a wonderful summary. A silver bullet solution is GIBS on the Qatar Exchange if you would like to, because Qatar Exchange Traded Fund has been performing well, and that's an opportunity. Apart from that, Australian companies have grown here, and we have seen investment side. Also, Nibras has gone in for 3 billion is total amount of investment. Qatar Investment Authority or Nibras or Assad Foods as on did. But there are big scope for investing in Australia as well. We know there are plenty of opportunities in infrastructure, road, railways, airports, and I'm sure Qatar Investment Authority will be looking at it. Potential in real estate, office buildings, or luxury hotels. There are many scopes. When it comes to corporate advantage, Ahmad Naji, are you there? Mr. Naji, to support the small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. Come and join us in the free zones. You have a bigger opportunity to see it in a growing market like Qatar, and we will welcome you to take the support from the Doha Bank. Now, on the international side, FI relationship has been prolific. Hilton and Andre is there to support. Andre, you want to sum it up from your side?
Yes, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. From a interbank perspective, so Qatar has always had a very good relationship with all the banks in Australia, and through Hilton in Sydney, obviously we are enhancing this relationship, and we've been interactive on various levels. But as we well know that all international business involves a bank on both sides of the transaction, and this is where Doha Bank wants to come in and facilitate the Australian import or export to do business in this region. So Doha Bank is extremely well placed to facilitate and to act as the single point of entry into not just only Qatar, but also the GCC market and in India for that matter, where we have also 3 branches. So it is a process where we can act on their behalf. We can also facilitate to accommodate their risk in these regions and as well as other regions as well where we are placed in 14 different countries across the globe. So we have got a wealth of risk appetite to accommodate the markets where the Australian banks feel uncomfortable in doing business. And Hilton has been very successful in that aspect as well, to refer business to us and to interact with the banks in Australia. So it is an opportunity that really is there, and especially now with the blockade opening up, we can return into markets, and we look forward to also build on the relationships with the banks to facilitate their business in the UAE and Kuwait and India, and especially in Qatar, with the tremendous amount of business already being done between Qatar and Australia. We look forward to also on the corporate and on the referral side and interbank side to bank and to be the point of entry for the corporate customers of Australia as well as the banks. So it's a good relationship, and I see only better things for us in the days to come.
Thank you, Andre. It's a good summary, and as you rightly said, Hilton has been a star performer who has done a terrific job in connecting these two markets through FIs and financial institutions par excellence. Now let us also ask, how about individuals? How can we support Makara? How can we support individuals, Australians who are coming for business or entrepreneurship? Individuals, how are you supporting, and how you will support in the coming days?
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We have a network of 23 branches in Qatar, and we are offering our best retail solution for Australian residents and also for companies based in Qatar in terms of corporate or SME. We are also offering our salary transfer package, and we are really proud to offer our Riyada VIP solution for all Australian executive and eligible customers here. I would also note that we have one of the best credit cards in the market. So Doha Bank can offer this as part of the salary transfer package, and it can be sold out standalone and offered as a standalone product. Finally, all Australian residents in Qatar can use our mobile and internet banking to send remittances from Doha to Australia. So we have a complete package, complete retail package for individuals and also for companies operating and based in Qatar.
Yes, that's a good summary. We are here for individuals. You want credit card, car loan, or consumer loan, anything you need to support with a branch network, whether Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Kuwait, Qatar. We have 23 branches plus electronic, mechanical, installations. We are here to give you things and cost effectiveness. The opportunities to conclude from my side, you have a bigger laws have been redefined. You have Qatar Financial Center. Qatar investment law has been reframed in 2019. Qatar has pronounced last year, make a public-private partnership law. And come and join us. Government is supporting this in many projects. We can showcase, individuals can settle through property law again. Freehold or leasehold is available with the permanent residency. And you also have 100% foreign ownership has been given. Food security, there are bigger opportunities. FinTech again, His Excellency has mentioned, Mr. Moin Anwar has mentioned, we're going to support you through Qatar Development Bank, and there is equity comes in, and we have a debt to provide as well. So count on us. And last but not the least, the Qatar Sustainable Development, we are a party. So we have reasons to believe that the relationship is just budding. We have bigger opportunities in the coming days, whether you're an incubator, a startup, or an established SME, or corporate, or individual, or any other institutions. Count on us. Our representatives sitting in Australia will facilitate enough knowledge for you to understand the dynamics of the economy on an ongoing basis, and we'll have continuing commitment to make sure we we support the bilateral trade, investments again, and banking in particular. That's our business in substance. Lending or investments is our business, and we will ensure we grow together, both Australia and Qatar, for long-term prosperity. Thank you, one and all, for your attention. Now I will hand it over to Mr. Hilton to say the closing remarks and word of thanks. Hilton.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Doha Bank and the participating colleagues of mine, I would like to thank all of our honoured speakers for sharing your valuable insights with the audience. I would say most importantly, I need to thank the audience for your attendance and very good questions that were coming in, and certainly shows the level of interest within the region. And I must say that the work that I've done for Doha Bank over the last 9 years has certainly been due to the very strong and great relationships that I have with so many of you who are on attendance on this call. So thank you very much for that. And finally, I'd like to wish you all to please take care during these unprecedented times that we are living in. And thank you again for your attendance today.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your participation, and Mr. Maya and rest of the team. It's a delightful session, and I couldn't answer all the questions because still we are out of line by almost 5 minutes. So we will clarify if you have further questions by mail. You can send it to Doha Bank Chief Executive's office or our resident representative in Sydney or international banking, and we will try to answer all your questions and coordination with the respective governments. Thank you all.